Hi, I'm Andy with Dorman Products, here to talk to you today about our leaf springs. When it comes to vehicle suspension, it doesn't get any simpler than the trusty leaf spring. Mounted between the wheels and the frame, the springs flex vertically to absorb impacts as the vehicle rolls along. The springs also flex as the vehicle's payload changes. Multiple leaf springs of varying length are commonly clamped together for different suspension dynamics, with a main leaf at the top of the stack and helper leaves below. However, you will see some mono-leaf designs out there using just one strip or leaf to make a spring. Linkages, shock absorbers, and other suspension components work together with the leaf springs to deliver a smooth ride. And because they can be designed for high working loads, leaf spring suspensions are particularly good for hard-working vehicles like pickups, vans, buses, heavy-duty trucks, and commercial vehicles. Besides suspension, leaf springs also have the important job of locating and supporting the axle in traditional designs. And when I say traditional, I'm talking about a pair of leaf springs mounted on either side of a shared axle. Because the springs share that axle in this arrangement, it's best to replace pairs of leaf springs together for consistent performance. Leaf springs are almost always made of tempered steel, but you will see some exceptions. For example, fully composite leaf springs were famously used in certain Chevy Corvettes, and more recently, Ford rolled out a hybrid steel and composite leaf spring design in the F-150. And speaking of those Corvettes, they're great examples of another leaf spring design variation. That would be the transverse leaf spring. Instead of having two separate leaf springs parallel with the vehicle's main axis, a single transverse leaf spring reaches across the width of the vehicle. In addition to the Corvettes, you'll see this arrangement on some GMW and E-platform cars, some Volvo models, and up front on quite a few Springer vans, just to name a few examples of transverse leaf spring vehicles on the road today. No matter how they're mounted, time-honored leaf springs have a job to do. The simplistic design offers reliable strength, but leaf springs don't provide the same level of comfort and forgiveness as some other suspension designs. The prime failure mode is simply wear. These springs are great at supporting heavy loads, but this will wear out the steel over time, limiting its ability to spring back. They can also crack near the ends of the springs or near the middle where the spring pack is clamped together. In a multi-leaf design, the top leaf is usually the one that snaps. Related parts like the bushings at the ends of the springs or the spring mounts attached to the frame can also cause trouble. A customer's vehicle with leaf spring issues may not sit level. Other symptoms include a rough ride, clunking, or stability issues. Thankfully, the simplicity of the leaf spring means that removal and replacement is fairly straightforward. Dorman offers a huge portfolio of replacement leaf springs and related parts to get sideline vehicles back into service, including standard duty, heavy duty, and extra heavy duty options. Not sure which type is right for your customer? Broadly speaking, standard duty leaf springs are designed for the same loads as the original springs. Heavy duty springs are around 35% stiffer than standard, and extra heavy duty springs bump that up to around 70% stiffer. Make sure the customer understands that stiffer springs will give a harsher ride when the vehicle is not loaded or towing. Our springs are carefully designed and rigorously engineered, and they're resistance tested for corrosion and fatigue. Dorman replacement springs are priced competitively compared to OE offerings, and we back up our springs with our limited lifetime warranty. There are a few different leaf spring eye styles out there, so pay attention here to make sure that you're finding the correct part for your customer. Beyond new leaf springs, Dorman offers many of the related parts you might need for a complete repair. You'll probably encounter worn bushings, missing axle bumpers, and broken spring perches. We have a wide variety of those parts for many applications. Shackles and frame mounting brackets are less prone to wear, but we have replacements for those parts too. When a customer comes in for replacement leaf springs, you should recommend some new U-bolts to clamp the springs to the axle. Factory U-bolts tend to rust heavily around the threaded ends, and sometimes they need to be cut out of the vehicle when swapping springs. Dorman has a deep catalog of U-bolt options for a direct fit. And for customers who tow, ask if they've looked at their trailer leaf springs lately. Trailer springs can sag and crack just like tow vehicle springs, and Dorman has leaf springs by measurement for trailer axles too. If you handle parts for a fleet, talk to your manager about tailoring your inventory to the fleet vehicles so that replacement parts are available when needed. Leaf springs in work vehicles that haul and tow commercially live harder lives than ordinary passenger vehicles. Replacing leaf springs is not a complicated job, but rusty hardware can cause serious headaches. An oxyacetylene torch should be on hand for the removal process. Propane just doesn't have the firepower needed for these fasteners. The customer should also use some penetrating fluid on the leaf spring hardware, preferably a few days before starting the job so it can soak in. But don't forget to recommend a can or 3. A determined DIYer should be able to handle a spring swap, but the job can be a bear. Expect plenty of torch work. Sometimes frozen fasteners need to be drilled out or cut. The customer should also have large hammers, impact tools, breaker bars, and drifts on hand. The vehicle needs to be lifted high enough to remove the wheels and wrestle the springs out from under the chassis. Safety is important here because a customer will be working under the vehicle and applying lots of persuasive force. A set of jack stands is absolutely necessary for safety if the work is not being done on a lift. Make sure your customer has a set of stands and offer to sell them one if not. After the new springs are in, the shocks and wheels will need to be reinstalled. If you're talking to a DIYer, make sure the customer has a torque wrench since these are safety critical nuts and bolts. Fresh leaf springs and related parts can breathe new life into a tired vehicle. Dorman leads the way in solutions for these components, and we're proud to keep countless leaf spring vehicles rolling with parts your customers can depend on. And remember, if you need any help before, during, or after the sale, our Dorman technical support team is always handy to help. Give them a ring at 866-933-2911. Thanks for taking a little time to brush up on leaf springs. We hope it helps you and your customers. I'm Andy, and I'll see you next time.